Falcon Heavy is configured for flight.
Let's get ready to rumble! Why you keep failing your classes? 40K is what I'm asking.
Alright, what's going on, everyone? My name is Kyle. As always, it's the BlackTees and Engineering Podcast. I have a special guest with me today, and I didn't even explain to him what the name of the podcast meant or anything, so I'm going to give a quick rundown on that. But we have Dr. Wuest with us here today. Pronounce that right?
That was totally correct.
That's always my number one question because I always get it wrong. I don't catch shit for it afterwards. But anyways, we have Dr. Wuest for us here today, and the BlackTees Engineering Podcast, the mindset and the piece to it is BlackTees being casual engineering talk. That's the idea here, and that's why we brought you on, because I took a look at your resume, and you have a lot of interesting stuff going on, and I've visited, just throughout the research department and talked to different people, and they say you're the guy for this.
All right, that sounds good. Let's see.
Right, we'll see. So 2018, what did you expect to be where you are today in 2018 in a field where, I guess let me set this up, in a field where technology is at the helm of the bottleneck and capacity of where we can go, right? In these manufacturing centers, like it's pretty much, there's no ceiling if we can get the technology right.
Well, as an academic, I probably have to disagree. There's always a ceiling, but in general, it's a very exciting time that we're in right now because technology made leaps forward, and it's now in our hands, and now it's what we do with it. And all of a sudden, we can do things that were envisioned 20 years back, but were impossible to do because of connectivity, sensors too big, too expensive, battery power not available. Now it is. You can buy it on Amazon for like $10, $20 an Arduino Nano, and you're good.
What did you think you were going to be doing when you were in college?
Well, I want to be a consultant. I want to work for McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group.
Ah, okay. And now you're a professor here at West Virginia University.
Yeah, that changed a little bit, right?
Changed a little bit. So what are some of the pieces that deflected you and sent you on a different trajectory here? What interested you to make you want to do something like this in the first place?
Well, during my studies, I wanted to be a consultant because I wanted to work with talented colleagues in a high-paced environment, learn a lot. Then after my second master's in business, I had a chance to work for Arthur D. Little in Switzerland as a consultant and really loved it for the first 4 months. It was, as I said, high-paced environment. The colleagues were awesome. We worked 14-hour days in average. Of course, all the consultants had an Excel table where I put my hours in. We didn't charge for it, but it was 14 hours a day in average.
Right, so a lot of work.
Yeah, and that one day it was, we had a big presentation to the C-level customers, and the project manager said like, oh, let's call it a day early. So we called it a day early, 8 o'clock at night. Went home and I lived with roommates back then because I lived where the project was settled, not in a hotel. And they had a barbecue. We sat outside, I had 2 beers, a steak, and thought, wow, that's like weekend. And then I thought like, wait a second, the customer always leaves at 5. I could have that every day. And then I reflected a little bit more critically and thought, like, what do we do there? You do a lot of work. You have a high-pressure environment, but it's not rocket science. It's basically just not making mistakes, do a lot of work, and communicate good with people. But it has been done before. You use tools that you use in other projects, your lessons learned from other companies, and bring it together, which is clearly challenging and has a clear benefit to the customer and yourself. But you're kind of guided by outside factors. And that's when I thought, maybe I want to do something more independent where I can steer a little bit where I want to go. And I guess that was the first, where it derived from my original trail.
Right, because what you were doing at the time, you were kind of being controlled by, I don't want to say the system, it sounds too anti-system, but you were, you were kind of, the man, but you were kind of being navigated in a weird way by industry and like just what's going on and stuff like that.
It's clearly needed that you improve the process. I mean, industrial engineers, that's what it's all about, like improve the process, make use of what you have, your tools, apply them to challenging problems, solve them, and move on.
Right. How old were you at this point when you actually thought of this and you were like, oh, geez, I'm kind of caught up in it?
That was 10 years ago, 2008. Actually.
2008. Yeah. And how old were you at the time?
So I can't get around that right now.
I know, I was
that. 25, 26.
Okay, 25, 26. Yeah. Okay. So
just finished my master's programs, and so before the PhD.
Right, and you're just like light bulb moment. Maybe this isn't what I wanted to move towards.
Yeah, it just started because when you're in that environment, you work with your colleagues, you work with these people all the time. They do the same thing you do. You don't question that you sit in the office till 11 or 12 at night because it's normal. And after you go for a beer with the same colleagues and you talk about the stuff you talk about. Like and they're great guys. They're really fun to be with. You don't miss anything.
Right. No, that's fascinating because right now I've done several rotations and several internships with a consulting group, and I just I have a similar mindset to kind of what you described. I'm like, I want to go work for a consulting group and do this and do that, and I've already kind of seen.
Oh my God! Hopefully McKinsey and the others will not hire a hitman or something. I mean, when I disappear, you know who it was.
That's a valid thought. Yeah. So you said that. You said, okay, this maybe isn't for me. And then you moved towards consciously thinking that you wanted to pursue a master's. Is that the idea? Or you already had a master's?
I had two masters, a master in industrial engineering and a master in business.
When you went into consulting, you already had those?
Well, the master in business was finalized, and after the consulting internship, I finished my master thesis and was done with the industrial engineering masters.
Okay. So what was the step after you had this thought then? What was the next move?
Well, during the master thesis, which I did also with a company, ThyssenKrupp, which was more like a machine builder. They built furnaces.
Right.
So I did that in their research facility. And the academic in Bremen, like my advisor, he afterwards asked me if I want to stay on for a PhD, and I explored a little bit what I wanted to do, looked at the US and some other markets and some companies like Siemens graduate programs and so on. And in the end, it was the best offer because I thought, okay, let's try the academic freedom a little bit, but still with a clear intention of going back into industry. Because
in Germany?
In Germany, it's a little bit different because when you look at the CEOs of most Siemens and all the ThyssenKrupp and the Bosch, the other technical companies, most of the CEOs or C-level managers have a PhD.
Right. Okay. So, how does that compare to the U.S. then? A lot of these managers don't have a PhD, right? A lot of them work their way up.
Surprisingly, a lot of them do, but they don't advertise it as they do in Europe or Austria, where the title is part of your name, kind of more. Here it's more casual.
Oh, okay. So I've actually ran this a few times. Is it possibly that just people in other countries respect those titles more than they do here, and that's why they feel the need to tag it on?
I don't necessarily think it's kind of a respect, but. And I don't know the philosophical reason behind it, but you can put it basically in your passport. It's part of your name after you wrote that. So and you put it in front of your name. It's not like a PhD, but it's Professor Dr. Wuest, for example, and that's how people address you. So,
right. Okay.
And I guess in these German companies are mostly technology focused, so it's accepted that the PhD is more applied and utilized in that. Right.
As if they couldn't tell already, I was going to make sure we worked the Germany portion into this, and I have some more questions about that coming down the road here. But German engineering, it's as if they go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, I guess that reputation helps, and I mean they so far did a good job until VW.
That was on the list. No, I got you. Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a positive thought of consciousness. You know what I mean? Like, at least when I think of engineering, I think of German as like one of the words I associate with it, just because of history.
I guess it's like in the DNA of the country. They see themselves as a manufacturing country and take great pride in it. And I think a big difference, for example, to other systems like the UK, for example, where there's a clear division between blue collar and white collar.
Right.
In Germany, it's more like the engineer or the manager will take advice from the guy at the shop floor because they know their job best. They're the experts on that system, so you ask them for advice. You don't tell them what they need to do because that's not your job. So it's mutual respect because you see the expertise, and the well-educated shop floor worker knows that system very well and can advise the engineer and say like, hey, you should probably think about this, and then And
wow, really?
For a good product. In
okay.
The end, yeah.
I just for hearing you explain that, I feel like that's a similar, or I've heard a similar methodology in Japan through just the worker being like, you know what I mean, being able to suggest things and them respecting it and seeing them as the master of that environment.
Exactly.
Which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to when you switched over to university, right? Switch over to university. Was the thought process that you were going to start working on the cutting edge of things in general?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, during the PhD, of course, I'm always involved in conferences and talking to other academics and companies and the people in the companies who can make decisions which impact their future a few years down the line. And of course, you can explore stuff that might not directly make economic sense, but you see potential in the future. So you have a chance to, like what we talked about, the AR classes, for example. It's something in a company I would probably not recommend it right now to directly jump into that, because right now it's a learning process.
Right.
But we can do that because we can just order them and say like, oh yeah, well, customer service is not there because it's brand new. But a company, that would be bad. But for us, it's like, okay, we figure it out. And,
right. It's new and it's exciting. And just for everyone listening in here, like this is so fascinating because I had no idea, probably until 2 years ago, my sophomore, junior year, I had no idea what research even meant. Like, I was clueless. I would call it ignorance, call it whatever it is, just not understanding the system and how it works. But I think a lot of these kids or people don't have any idea what it means. I truly think, and I don't think professors think of this when they're in school or here at the university, but I really think that the majority of the people who walk by your office or in your classroom really have no idea what research even means, like the fundamentals of it. Like if you ask them to give them a real description of it, like, why do we do research here? What's the point? I guarantee 3/4 of the kids in the class can't answer the question. Because I think it's just, there's a gap somewhere where no one explains it to them, or they think it's assumed or something like that. But most of these people, I don't think have any idea. And including myself, like I just said, a year ago, I had no idea until I just started asking questions. And I was like, wait, you mean the things out in the world that are on like the most, frontier, the things that people find so cool that we look up online and we're like, oh wait, like AR glasses, like I'm sitting here playing with things in the air, you know what I mean? That type of stuff. That's what research is about. It's about breaking down these fundamental things so they can use it in the technology. And when I found that out, that's when I was like, oh, I'm stopping in all these offices. And I like, you know what I mean? Then you start going around these offices down here, and you're like, wow, they're working on just stuff that actually does break that, the breakthrough that leads to these items.
Yeah, okay. So you mean there's a certain disconnect in the perception of what a university is about? Yeah.
Right. So in a weird way, the university, that's how a university is in business and thrives in a way, right? Or that's what they want to be known for, is these research groups and things.
At least a research university.
Yeah, at least a research university. I guess I'm not educated enough to even say what that exactly, what these focuses are. But yeah, that. So
actually, just to chime in here, I had a visiting professor from Germany here right now, last week actually.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, and he actually, his group always posts Facebook videos each, like they call it, Worker Wednesday. Or something. So they introduce one of their researchers of the group, and they explain in 1-minute videos on Facebook what they do. So to connect the students, because the students always see professors in the classroom or for exams, and that's the extent of it. But that's just a small portion of what we really do and what we're here for. Yeah.
That's a great point, because I think that, like I said, until last year I didn't even know. Like, I didn't realize some of these professors are here because they're interested in it went right over my head. As dumb as that is, it's like I should have seen that coming. You know what I mean? But yeah, so what are some of the research things that you're doing or that you're interested in or whatever? Because you just mentioned AR glasses and stuff like that. But maybe help us see the full picture, because a lot of times we hear a word that someone's doing in research and it sounds overly complicated and heavy and bureaucratic type of a word, like industry 4.0. You know what I mean? IoT 4.0, just different things in general. And people don't make the connection. They don't see it.
So okay, probably could go on for the rest.
I know this is where it came. It struck me. Wow, bringing professors in to talk is perfect. Like people would talk for days on this stuff. So let's start with one thing that you're fascinated, that you're interested, you've been.
I think what sums it up pretty much is smart manufacturing, and I will elaborate just a little bit on that. What I mean by that is it's basically the connectivity between the life cycle phases. So it's not just manufacturing, but the smart is, I think, the essential part.
Yeah, break that down. Life cycle phases. I know. Like, we're both IE based here, but a lot of people aren't.
Yeah, so what I mean with life cycle phase is that view that you have the beginning of life of a product, where you have the design, the manufacturing, the pricing, and so on, and then the middle of life where the product is used. That can be in a business environment, like a industry, like a machine tool or something, but it could be your car or your iPhone.
Right.
And then you have the end of life, where basically the end of the useful life of that product ended. Your car crashed, or your iPhone the new one came out, you don't like the old one anymore.
You got the crappy iPhone, all your friends have the 10, they're pulling it out, and you're like, I need to get rid of this device. That's the point. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so there's the planned obsolescence, like when some companies, when their business model is based on, okay, the washing machine broke, we have to buy a new one. That's how the company, let's call them Kenmore, earns their money. Okay. Don't want to diss Kenmore just to pick the random name.
No, random name. But let me break off for half a second. We'll jump right back into that. Do companies build defects into their product, or not defects, but kind of build defectiveness into their product. So they I don't want to say so they make more money, that's exactly people have to buy more of their product or buy additional pieces for it.
Yeah, no, very simply, yes. There's a name for it. It's called planned obsolescence. And it's basically you plan that your product lasts that long. I mean, look at your printers. You have here a HP or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, these printer cartridges are freaking expensive.
As he looks in the corner, there's a 1980s printer sitting there.
That probably doesn't have that system. But the new systems, the printers are dirt cheap. They probably sell it with a loss or just break even. But the cartridges are very advanced, and a lot of them have chips in them now, and they count how many pages you print. So they are guaranteed for 1,000 pages, and after 1,000 pages, there might be 80% of the ink still in there. They will not print anymore. So you buy the new one. All right? And the reason is, yes, they are sales-based business models, so they will earn money when they sell you a product. The same with a washing machine. When it breaks, you have to buy a new one because it's not feasible to repair it anymore.
These guys, let me tell you. Jeez, man.
And
really?
then actually the class I'm teaching tonight is product service system that tries to move into that section and try to establish a new business model. Companies will always want to earn money. That's their reason for being, to earn money.
Of course.
But how can we help them earn money but still be environmentally responsible? Like to say, okay, can we disconnect basically the revenue model from consuming resources? And product service system is kind of like that, because all of a sudden you have more like a subscription model, like your Netflix. You don't buy DVDs anymore, but you buy a monthly fee and you have access to what you need.
In a weird way, could you say that's a more morally sound business model? Like you're building something to the best of your ability in giving a subscription based on it, rather than building something and planning for it to fail in 5 years? That might be a bad way to look at it.
I would keep morality out of it, because that's a very philosophical thing, and I would not go that far, but I think it's a more sustainable business model, because you provide the company with the means to earn a living, basically, and the customer gets a better satisfaction of their needs. Because when you think of it, let's go back to the washing machine, is a good example.
Right.
In the end, what you want is clean clothes. You don't care how they're clean. You just don't want to have a problem. You don't want to have a flooded apartment. You don't want to worry about in the ideal
But
world.
I also don't want to buy a new washing machine after 5 years.
Exactly, yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Like, you're not interested in buying a washing machine, owning it. It doesn't matter. You won't brag to your friends that you
Are you talking about the pros
machine.
of the subscription-based model?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Or the transition, like just how the customer would benefit or the user would benefit from it. And in the end, right now, when you buy a washing machine, you are responsible for the energy you put in, because you plug it in, you pay your energy bill.
Right.
You pay your detergent, right?
Yeah.
But in the end, you don't care about that. It's just additional annoying stuff that you have to take care of. In the end, you want clean clothes. When a company would be able to provide you with that, and they provide the washing machine, all of a sudden they have an interest of having low maintenance, because they would be responsible for maintaining it. They would be responsible for paying for the parts. They would be responsible for the increased energy that it needs when they are not building it efficiently.
Right.
So it might be, or it is, in the end, they would invest more in building this thing, using better materials, using more design resources to build it really nicely so it won't fail, because then they earn more money. When it runs without any problem for 10 years, then they break even.
I think this makes way more sense on a both sides of you know what I mean, the consumer.
But
and
it's still a transition. This business model switch is very hard for companies when they're in this traditional, we build something, sell it, and then we are disconnected.
Right.
Because all of a sudden you can collect data how the user uses the washing machine, phase it back in, and use it for design to build an even better next generation model.
Okay, this makes sense, and I know we totally segued there. Okay, but smart, it's just what I'm interested in.
But that's the core of it. Like,
yeah.
it's a very interconnected. You see, I talked about business models, which is probably, you would say, that should be in the business school, and yeah.
That's why these things I think are so complex to explain to some people, because once you start into one subject, right, like smart manufacturing, and then you have to explain this other subject that goes like 50 layers deep, and this other subject, just to make it all really, truly make sense. But back to what you were saying about smart manufacturing in general, and that's been your area of research. That's where I think I'll let you go ahead with it, but man, this is where it gets real fascinating. People, if they understood more of this, what you're about to describe, they'd be like, I'm going industrial engineering, or I'm going mechanical, or something that builds towards this progress, because I'll tell you what, it is cool. But go ahead, back to what you're saying. I think we stopped part way.
Yeah, okay, let me backtrack a little bit, but you said, I want to study industrial engineering. I think with smart manufacturing, you don't have to study industrial engineering. I mean, it would be good to do because it's a really cool major.
Okay.
But mechanical, computer science, business, they all come into play. Like you can't do it's not a single discipline topic.
Okay.
That's by nature interdisciplinary.
I do think of it as like, do these other majors talk about it? I'm not in the classes.
Absolutely. I mean, in the lane department, they work on IoT devices, connectivity of sensors, batteries, and you need that to enable smart manufacturing. Without that, it won't work. You have the apps that basically visualize it, the AR classes. You have pattern recognition where you develop advanced algorithm. And all that comes in as pieces of this bigger picture smart manufacturing on the shop floor and beyond.
No, this makes perfect sense. That goes back to, like, do you think they would understand the word if I said smart manufacturing to them? Or they understand the IoT portion and they're kind of disconnected from what it...
Yeah, that probably, because IoT can also be done in smart infrastructure, in buildings.
I get what you're saying now. You're saying that it's all part of the puzzle. Yeah, it's like the idea is if I take my phone apart, we can pick apart 10 engineering majors that were part of it. That's the idea.
Yeah, and in smart manufacturing, because IoT, the industrial Internet of Things, is a little bit different from the typical IoT, what we basically have in our pockets.
Right.
Because you have increased requirements towards data security, connectivity. Like you cannot, it cannot fail because otherwise you lose a lot of money in your manufacturing environment. The cybersecurity aspects are important. The latency, like because you need to the data needs to be at the machine for real-time control within a very small fraction of a second.
Yeah, of course, or else your whole line's getting messed up or whatever it is that you're running. Or your product.
Because when you want to, for example, the real-time control, when you observe the quality of a data in real time and want to adapt your process according to what you just analyzed, that needs to be done really, really fast, right?
Right. So let's paint that picture real quick. So we didn't even talk about that, but like, what's the world look like now compared to what it would look like with smart manufacturing? I guess right now is the idea is it's like, it's not all interconnected, so it's hard to see real-time flaws in the system, right? So you have to be an observer at the site to kind of see it, or to see like the end product. Yeah, you'd walk me through it.
Yeah, it's not that black and white because I guess there are some very advanced companies out there who are leading that field. I would mention Siemens, for example, or GE are of course at the leading edge of that, and they are not just leading on the visualization part, but also the data analytics what come into play and the sensors, and of course for their products it makes sense. When it's like aerospace products, you need the best materials. Money is not that much of an issue when it comes to quality and safety and the other. They're
going to pay top dollar.
Exactly.
Unless you're SpaceX.
And when we go on the other end of the spectrum, the small 5-people manufacturing shop here in West Virginia. They have totally different problems. They have equipment that's a little older, it's more manual, it's not that connected, because they build specialized parts for mining operations, for example, or as a supplier for whatever, like Toyota in a small scale.
Right.
And we had that discussion quite a bit, that they said like, hey, smart manufacturing, we understand what it is for the Toyota and the Mercedes and the Siemens and the GE and the Teslas. We fully understand why they need it with the robotics and the connectivity and the automation. But for us, we don't have like this batch sizes. We don't have that specialty products. We don't see what the application is. And then when you go deeper and say like, hey, you can visualize this one machine that gives you trouble, or that one part of your process that you basically lose money over, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, okay, I understand. Let me give you one example. Here in near Wheeling, there's Eagle Manufacturing.
Oh, I'm from Wheeling, and I've been to Eagle's Manufacturing.
Well, then like 200 people. Joe Eddy, great guy, very very visionary. So he was a great person to interview, and we looked at their operation, and they showed us what they did, because they had a problem with their boiler, like steam that you needed for their production, and sometimes their boiler cooled down overnight because there was some kind of a problem, and the automated system for safety shut it down, so it cooled off. In order to have steam, it took 2 hours to bring it up to temperature. And when the people came, the first shift, I think it was 7 in the morning, I don't know the exact time, they came and the boiler was cool. So basically they had to wait. They had to wait 2 hours until the boiler was on temperature to start the shift and production. And 2 hours, there were, 100 people standing around doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
Well, not doing nothing, but like, they're not productive.
Waiting, Did
not what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, right. Not as,
Yeah, and so what they did was basically a very simple, for comparably little money, they installed their own system where basically the boiler, when it experienced a problem, it sent a simple text message to the maintenance chief, and he could come in 2 hours early, fire up the system, and when the shift arrives, they can start production. Very simple, very clean, but that's what smart manufacturing is. Basically, they used connectivity and technology to improve their processes.
What about smart technology in our houses? Like, is there a way? Like, I know, like, I've lived in a house, and I guess, is this strictly IoT? I don't know. You explain it to me, but I had like a Nest temperature gauge, and I had it hooked up to my phone. Then I had Philips Hue bulbs linked up to my phone. Then I had Alexa linked up in the camera. You know what I mean? And it's all on my phone. And I got it linked up so that props to my friend, actually, shout out Jimmy. He set all this up. So I would be driving home, and it would be reading my GPS location, and I would strike the geofence that I have set up, and then it would start heating up the house so that, it has like a 5 mile radius. So by the time I get in the door in the winter, it's already warm.
Yeah, that's a great application of the Internet of Things, and I have exactly the same setup, and of course it doesn't work as it's advertised most of the time, but if it works, it's very impressive, and then you feel very good, but then otherwise you basically have to put the hard switch because this one bulb always turns on again. It's a new technology, so we're still learning, and of course there's different standards.
Do you have it? Do you have it really set up though? Like, do you have it so like in the morning you wake up and there's like, well, I'm guessing, never mind. I mean, you probably have a wife and you're waking up at different times, whatever. But for me, at least,
I have a baby. I wake up a lot. So.
Oh, okay. So from my perspective, I would put like green lights on there, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I'd be having them flash like yellow, red, green to wake me up in the morning with music playing, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that would be possible. I don't do that because I'm normally awake before my alarm rings, but yes.
Oh, man, okay.
Not voluntarily.
Not voluntarily?
Yeah.
Oh, the baby.
Yes.
Okay. Hopefully I'm a long way from there, but we'll see. Who knows, man? Life.
It's wonderful. So, yeah. Shout out to Dominic.
Shout out to Dominic. All right. So I have a good one here for you. It's something that I'm really, truly clueless about, and it's along the lines of research. I looked online at your website, and I just saw some of I don't know the right wording, some of the research papers you've read through or been on a board for. I have no idea how this works. Okay. You've wrote numerous papers. I think I also read that you were you got congratulations for being cited on Google on over 100 pages through Google Scholar. Is that right? So I saw that. That was cool. That's probably one of the lower of your achievements here. You had 26,000 views on one of your papers that you wrote. Oh man, I'm ignorant on this. I looked briefly, but the general idea here is that What? So you write a paper. What is the point of quote unquote writing a paper? This is what I'm saying. Where there's a big gap. I think if I went in and surveyed all these kids, that most of them would be like, yeah, I don't know what writing a paper does. I don't get it. You know what I mean? What's the point of it? Who's judging it and saying, yeah, this paper's right, or no, it's just you've messed up somewhere?
Okay, let me answer that in two parts. One, why we write papers is basically, to get the word out. Do good things and talk about it. And when you do good things and it fails, still talk about it so others don't have to waste resources to do the same thing.
Based on your research,
yeah,
right?
You basically communicate research achievements or research that you have done. The results of your research, you try to communicate to the rest of the community, the research community in your field. And then slowly you push the state of the art and basically contribute to the body of knowledge. So in the end, there's different ways of creating new knowledge, like pushing the boundary of knowledge. And then when just you know about it, what's the benefit to humankind or to your community? You would not be recognized on a selfish basis, but also others could not build on your work and basically move on.
Okay, so
then the process of writing a paper is, you have to do the experimentation. You basically generate this new knowledge, this new insight that others didn't have before. However you do that, there's a variation of ways to do that. Then you write your paper and then you submit it to a journal or conference where then your peers are invited by an editor to say, look at this, check it, is it correct? And there's, again, different ways. Sometimes your name is revealed. So that's a single blind peer review where they know, who wrote it. And they still go through it. They're anonymized. So you don't know who judges your paper, normally 3 to 4 people. They look critically at your paper, often very critically, and then try to find flaws and address them. Then either your paper is rejected when they say, it's not good, then the paper's... Yeah.
People of equivalent academic status as you, PhDs, people who are also known in the field, right?
Exactly. Normally so if you wrote
so what was one of you? Say it again. What was one of your research papers?
Machine learning and manufacturing.
Machine learning and manufacturing. So people also renowned in that field review your thing and say, give it a check mark, like, yeah, this makes sense. This actually aligns with what we were seeing.
Yeah. And that can go through multiple rounds, saying like, oh, in this point here, I think this is not well explained. This doesn't make sense to us here. Some work is needed. Then that would be called major revisions, where you then can go back, address it, send it to them again, and they check it again.
Is this a peer-reviewed journal? Is that what this is?
Yeah, that's peer review. So there's blind peer review, where you basically they see your name, but you don't see the reviewer's name, because otherwise, that would be a problem, because the communities are small.
Oh, man.
And then there's double blind, where basically they don't see who published the paper to really have a level playing field.
Which is probably the most fair, I guess.
Yes and no. It's the most common one.
But they have to know. Like, they didn't have to know who's working on what.
Yeah, the problem is when you build up on previous work, it's very hard to to not know who does that.
Yeah, like if I see that you're doing something in IoT or something in this specific version of it, and then I see a continuation of it.
Yeah, you'd have to try to, like, your name is removed, and some journals insist that you don't cite to your previous work, but it's still hard. Like, it's sometimes you can still guess, but you won't know. But the intention is very good, because then the intention is just the quality of the work is judged, and not the fancy name that's behind it, or the fancy university, or something like that. Right.
So let's build on this little structure we have going. So you're a professor who's doing research. Do you naturally just have people under you helping with the research? Or how does it work?
Well, normally you have a team of grad students, postdocs, undergrads, and then you design your research project. And normally you have objectives, and when you find out something interesting that's worth publishing, then normally you encourage your team and work with your team to develop a structure, and then gradually go through different rounds internally to develop the paper.
Boom. That's the bomb I wanted to drop. That's exactly it. Because what happens is that's the research portion that, like, I didn't know about growing up. Like, all these professors, they choose, right? Is that how it works? Well, maybe that's not how it works. The idea is that, say I'm applying for grad school, right? And I want to get a master's and do research under a certain professor, right? Does that professor play a role in me getting into grad school? Like, they get to choose, like these people have similar GPAs, right? I know this person does good work, whatever, right? I'd prefer to have them on my research. How does that play a role?
That depends. Like, it's depends on the university, the department, and the culture in a certain field. But yes, when you have a professor who vouches for you, that carries a lot of weight.
Okay, yeah. So there's many more variables in the process, but that carries a big part of it. Okay, that makes sense. So if someone explained that to me coming in freshman year, I wouldn't have just said, screw the GPA, throw it out the window. You know what I mean? I didn't realize that you had to have a good GPA in order to get into grad school. And I didn't even know what the point of grad school was, right? So for 2 or 3 years, I was like, who cares about getting a good GPA? I was like, you just meet the threshold of wherever you want to go. And I was like, you can toss the rest out the window.
Otherwise, it would be a waste of resources, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Doing more than needed, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, see, that was my vision. So
I'm glad you changed a little bit and understand that there's value in doing more than needed.
Oh, not in time. Not in time. Trust me. I'm trying to end the hiring process right now. It's didn't change in time.
It's never too late. Like, my high school grades were really bad. I have to admit that. And then the army turned me around. So yeah,
I saw that you went to the army in Germany.
Yeah, I'm an officer there. Yeah.
An officer there. I saw that. Wow, what was that like?
I
you did that after?
Yeah, normally, like, back in the days when I graduated from high school, 2001, it was mandatory for all male citizens to go for 9 months in the army. And so I had to do that. And it was actually the Monday after our prom that I had to be in the barracks. So we did that, and I loved the first 3 months, the basic training, because it was awesome.
So was this before college then?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Directly after high school.
Okay.
You can push it, but yeah.
It was required to go.
Yeah.
Gosh, it shows my political ignorance right now. Okay, so you had to go.
It's not anymore, so they changed that.
Okay.
So it was for 9 months. So I went for the original 9 months. But
what were your feelings towards that? Like, it was probably a normal thing at the time. Everyone was like, "Oh, go do my time."
I was just happy to be done with high school and have that checked off. And so I thought, okay, well, that's a good time to reevaluate what I want to do. And then after 3 months, the first basic training was really boring because, what do you do? Right? There's a lot of soldiers and not much to do. And thank God, peace times. So I was actually in basic training when 9/11 happened. So that was kind of like, okay, then it was at the brink of you didn't know. So
that's scary.
We were in the barracks and didn't go home with everything packed. So we were NATO, so we were allies, and it was when there's an attack, you have to be ready. But after that, anyhow, I'm getting derailed.
No,
again.
no, no. That's scary though, because you like for the most part, it's probably I'm not a good historian, but for the most part, like in the time that you were enrolled, right, or in the several past groups of people who were enrolled, there was probably no craziness going on. So for the most part, it was serve your time and get out. Or am I wrong?
Well, after the Iron Curtain was fallen down, I mean, my dad was in the forest for I think 8 weeks when the Prague uprising was. He was in the paratroopers, so yeah, they were ready to go and fight the Russians when they come. But then after the Iron Curtain and everything was a little bit more relaxed, it was
More stable. Yeah.
was more stable. But yeah, after that, basically, it was very boring to me. And then I thought, okay, what could I do? And then I decided to enroll for officers training. And for my personal development, that was a big step, because all of a sudden I was responsible for a group of recruits. And you had to deliver, because they were reliant on you. And that it was that change of mindset that I needed, and that push that I needed.
What a feeling that is, yeah. That's crazy. And then you were, 18 at the time, around there? Wow, that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
So, swinging back around here to something that we were starting to touch on earlier, and I didn't want to just jump into it out the gate, was we started getting this idea of big data, right, of IoT and being able to collect all this information at one time, right, and working it into our system and making conclusions, drawing insights based on it, and then changing, our manufacturing process or making immediate changes to help stabilize the system. But what I'm interested in is something along the lines of big data and this idea that companies are feeding on data right now, right? Like Google, like all these big companies. I know we're straying away from our expertise here, but hey, you got to have fun sometimes. So these big companies are collecting all this data on us, right? And I've been, call me a conspiracy theorist here, but I've been on the route of they're listening to us. Like I've watched 150,000 videos on maybe why they're not listening to us from computer scientists, right? Mm-hmm. I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. And I've heard all their explanations, but I swear to you, I have never Googled Python in my entire life or anything until a year ago in the car with my friend. Next thing I know, Python's just getting blasted all over my phone through advertisements, through all these things. And I've done research on why that could possibly be. On like, I'm put into a peer group of people, right? And they might all be at the time Googling Python. And since I'm in their advertising group, been lumped into their group through these companies, now they're hitting me with advertisements thinking that I might be in that group, right? And now they're using machine learning and stuff to figure out, oh, maybe he's not a part of that group, whatever. But my point here is that I'm starting to think it might be better if our phones are listening to us. So follow me on this. What if we found a way to own our data to a point like Apple is constantly turns their phone on, so it listens to us all the time. It now like draws conclusions based on the conversations we have and puts us into different advertising groups and puts it into a folder so that we own that folder of data and no one else does, and we can sell it.
That's actually an interesting point of view, and you're not so far off what people are actually playing around with. I'm saying playing around with, doing research on.
Right.
Because I just had that conversation with the CIO of UCLA, Jim Davis. He's the lead behind the Smart Manufacturing Initiative out of LA, where WU is also part of. And we interviewed him for the World Manufacturing Forum's report. And he mentioned that one perception change that will come and is already coming, because when companies now negotiate contracts, there's always a data portion. That was not there before. People are aware data is something important, okay?
Well, the difference is that people are aware now. Before it was like there was this line of ignorance.
Awareness is there, but now
bury it in somehow.
We don't have a business model that corresponds with that. So we don't know, there's no dollar value attached to data yet. We know it's worth something, but owning your data, when nobody wants to buy it, it's kind of like, okay, it costs you money to curate it and to have the servers that run and store it. So that will take time, but people are working on to see like how could that be. You have more control over your data. You benefit from your personal data, and so you say, hey, you're basically already selling your data and get a benefit from it.
We're just trading right now, selling the data for.
Do you use the Kroger card?
Yeah.
Yeah. You trade your data for a discount. You're basically getting paid for your data. That's how it works.
I never thought of it in terms of the Kroger card, but that's
Why do you think they do that? They want to know what you personally buy, when you buy it, how often you buy it. I have a Kroger card, and Kroger don't listen, but I never registered it because I don't want it associated with my name, but I pay with credit card. So basically they have that anyways, even so I feel very, very smart and like a spy that I use it incognito.
You're like manipulating their data sets based on what you want.
That's what I believe, but I think I probably didn't outsmart them, but it still makes me feel good, so I don't want to think about that.
That's so funny. And yeah, no, you're right. Data's being collected 24/7. I think a lot of people are starting to understand that more. Engineers especially, just because we work on the back end
on the
of
shop
it.
floor it's a different story. And let me give you one tiny example, because you
Please.
said Google and we derail. We don't derail. Google might go into that field at one point because they're really good at what they do. Analyzing data, finding patterns, drawing conclusions, automated. So scalability is there. They don't need the human element that much in their process, which is great for their business.
Absolutely.
And we talked to a smaller company, and in Germany there's a lot of small companies that have a certain product where they're the leader in the world that nobody else can compete with. So they have their niche. They do that extremely well, highly priced products. But for example, in theaters, it's red velvet curtains.
Right.
There's one company in the southern part of Germany who builds these. Because who else would do it?
Of course.
So to get into that market, high-end, money not such a big issue, quality is the issue. They have that niche and they own it. So and that works for they're family owned, so they have a long perspective. They do that very well. We talked to one company manufacturing, I think it was saw blades, like specialized diamond coated saw blades for special applications. And I said, okay, so you have of course they have quality issues. Every manufacturing process can be improved, otherwise industrial engineering would kind of be out of a job.
Yep.
And so we thought, okay, we can collect data, analyze it, and then understand what we can do better, how we can improve the process, where the real problems in the process are, to then target them and improve. And the guy said, like, oh no, we don't want the data digitally available. I said, oh, why not? I said, like, well, right now I'm paying my people very well. I treat them extremely good. They're kind of like my family. They work here till they retire. They're excellent at their job. They take pride in the product. So we're the only ones who have that. Once I collect the data, nobody can guarantee me that nobody gets access to that data, because there's always a breach, and once it's stored, somebody might access it.
So many bridges, many. You let WhatsApp get your. I don't want to say WhatsApp because they're clearly owned by a bigger company, but I'm saying any random app that you don't know is owned by a bigger company, they're like trading some monetary money so that they can stay afloat. Some startup might be trading all their data.
As long as the app is free, they have to earn their money some way, and then you're the product. Yeah.
And you don't even know that they're selling it to this company, that company. So you're getting Facebook ads, but you're like, I don't even use Facebook. I use like this random app, but like they're still getting the data somehow.
No, but coming back to the manufacturing example,
Right.
even so they would store it on their own servers. I mean, there can always be a breach. Once the data is digitally available, there's no 100% guarantee that nobody can access it.
Yeah, what about the storing on their own servers though? I mean, is that what you just like?
Yeah.
I'm confused about that. If they collect the data and store it on their own server, where's the fault in that?
No, they're not necessarily, but there is a potential, because somebody could go with the USB stick, and that he was a little paranoid. But
They don't even want to do that.
No, they didn't want to do that, because he said, well, then the company, we have no expertise in machine learning and pattern recognition and so on. So we might learn a little bit, but another company who gets access to that data, however, okay, they are experts in machine learning and pattern recognition. They use the fancy new neural networks to try to find the little bits and pieces and learn about our process. And then they don't have to pay their people a fair salary. They can produce somewhere in a country where the environmental legislation is very different. So all of a sudden they can produce the same or even a better product, or close to that quality of that product at a much lower margin. And that would jeopardize their market standing.
Yeah, it's almost as if like the downside. He's clearly looking at it as like, yeah, it's
He
just
was
better if I don't even.
Very, because he did that for like 30, 40 years. He
Right.
was the patriarch, like family owned. But so that's one extreme. We try to argue him out of it and say like, hey, we can take repercussions, but when you miss that train, at one point you will get in trouble because others might get ahead. And
I love that you just said that though, because that's really like, I think students or a lot of people in general, just people coming out are like, yeah, companies need to innovate and get ahead and this and that. And we say it almost blindly, as if like we don't really understand it. We're just like, yeah, get ahead of the curve, this and that.
yeah, it's not like just you don't just do it to do it. It's like there should be a purpose behind it, and oftentimes or always there's a resource constraint. Like you have that many people who could be free to do innovative research in your company, collaborate with universities, or basically you could pay others to help you with your innovative projects. But you have to choose, because you cannot put out all the fires or invest in all equally. So there has to be some strategic decision made to say, okay, hey, that's our priority. And that's where we have to invest a certain amount that will make a difference. Because when you just use your sprinkler and put a little bit of effort in everything, you will not get ahead, because then that's not enough to do anything that's meaningful.
Right. No, that makes sense. I have to, before we wrap up here, I have to ask, just because like you're already sitting here, what's your thought, and you're into manufacturing, you're deep in it, what's your thought on all this, all these fireworks going off around the whole Tesla and the whole Elon Musk thing, right? Because he's kind of being, I think, I think it's positive, just because engineering is getting so much of a exposure to this, right? It's kind of like a rock star thing in a weird way. Like the idea that he's making these things, even though it might be a persona and PR and them boosting his like look up, you know? What do you think about their actual like manufacturing side of things? Like, I think they're held back right now, right? They're like really behind in production on the cars. And
actually, when you would have been in my class last year, we started when they said the Model 3, they want to automate everything. Every week I put a headline out and said like, we will see. Because Tesla is, in my opinion, is not a car company, it's a technology company. So they come from the startup perspective. And I mean, the car companies, for a reason, they do things how they do it. I mean, they can improve and they can innovate, they can change a little bit, of course, too, because that's not the only right way to do it. But to scale up production and keep the quality and have this tech times, that's not going overnight. And Tesla did realize that at one point and hired a lot of senior people from Mercedes, and Mercedes had a stake in Tesla. I think so far Mercedes is one of the only companies who made money with electric cars, because basically they made a lot of money when they sold their stock in Tesla.
That's hilarious. I
Yeah.
never even thought of it that way.
But yeah, I mean, it was pretty clear that they will run into trouble, and especially with their high percentage of automation, because there's the cognitive automation and there's the physical automation, and when they focus on their physical automation to try to make the process more reliable. You need to consider that automation is not a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like it needs maintenance, it needs to be planned, it needs to be effective, and they underestimated the human element. And I think that's why I always refer to an older definition of smart manufacturing, where they emphasize the human ingenuity that's an essential part of smart manufacturing. Like, it's not to replace the human off the shop floor, like the workerless shop floor that was a vision in the 90s. That's not what I believe should happen, first of all, and second of all, will happen, because humans are very good in certain things that machines are not. And when we can bring them together, that both can play their strengths to the full potential, that humans are freed up with manual tasks of, find a little mistake in the data, we can automate that. So they can do something, innovate, think about the process on a bigger picture, think about problem solving, and all of a sudden you have a system that improves over time and basically works like a well-oiled machine.
Wow. Yeah. I just think of it as machines are taking over.
Well, no. You should read the Dominion Post last December, where we clearly said that will not happen. So.
No, I'm siding with the newspapers here. Yeah, man, I think they just post all that stuff just to get those views up and get the people riled up.
And I mean, there's data like that was always a fear. I mean, you're in my class, and I hope you were there in that lecture where we talked about the first industrial revolution, where
low chance. No, I'm kidding.
Where the cloth makers basically they revolted because the machines took over their jobs. But when we think over time, we work more than ever, and the jobs change. But we now have like 3 cars instead of 1.
I know that's not the immediate worry, right? But what about like the more long-term thought? Because I've heard some other people speak on this, right? Just through YouTube videos and stuff, just popular ones, nothing deep, right? And they talk about, like, this is where we get into this political talk of, oh man, my political side is showing.
To work or something.
No, the idea of universal, like
income.
people. Yeah, right. And they're talking about it, and you know what I mean, on these platforms and forums, right? Usually where it shows up before 10 years down the road, we start thinking about it. So, like, is that just talk, or I mean, what's the reasoning for that then?
Well, the thing is, the jobs will change, as I said, and the jobs will be more demanding mentally and less physically. So there are, of course, portions of the society that probably does not want to or is not capable of fulfilling these jobs education-wise or capability-wise. And then some portion of the society will kind of like be left behind. And I think it's a responsibility of a society to somehow find a way to give a purpose to these people, and that could be a general income. So they could use that time for social work or working with in their communities and so on. There's a lot of things that can be done, and we know that. I have a very distinct opinion about this general income. I think in theory it's a great idea to say, okay, give people responsibility and the freedom to do what they want to do. In the US it might work a little better than in the more socially oriented European countries, because there it would be okay when somebody is irresponsible and gets that monthly income,
right,
which is there to provide shelter, food, medication, and all that, what they need, and it should be enough for that. But when they decide on the first day to blow it out in a bar, and then they would die of hunger, then the society would jump in, and that's where the flaw will come in, because then all this in savings that are anticipated say, oh, we don't need health insurance because everybody will have that. Oh, we don't need social workers because everybody, all the idea is you need that, and it's then it just adds up on the cost. So
yeah, so the thought is that if a certain percentage of people do this and we see that percentage rising as a result, like just hypothetically, if that was the case, now we have to look at it and say, well, there's still something we need to do, right? And now we're kind of back in the same boat.
Because you cannot morally let somebody die of hunger, even so it's their fault, so to speak. But that's just
it's not as
how
easy.
Society
it's
works.
not as easy as how it seems.
In theory, it seems very straightforward, and it's a great idea. But a lot of great ideas had to face reality at one point, and
that's a great point, and I think we're coming to the end of our time here. So I just want to thank you for coming on here, and you're very knowledgeable, and I wish we could have got to more of your research, but I was afraid we were going to go over the time too much. But definitely glad to have you on, Dr. Wuest. What's your Twitter? Because I know you were active on Twitter.
Well, it's my first name and last name, but I probably have to spell it out because my first name and last name are not that usual.
I'll put it up here on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube, right. And if you're listening to this by podcast, let's go ahead and hear the spelling of it.
Wonderful. It's THORSTEN WUEST.
All right, at Thorsten Wuest.
Like the God of Thunder, Thor. Yeah.
God of Thunder. Okay, all right. And thank you very much for coming on here. I'm sure you'll be back on in time as long as you accept, because you have a lot of interesting views, and I'm sure there's some world scenarios that will play out that you'll enjoy coming back and talking about.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, everyone. This is the BlackTees and Engineering Podcast. I think this is episode 8. I'm not sure. Tune in next time. I have Dr. Gall from the West Virginia University MAE department coming down, and we're going to talk about being a pilot.